When a fearful avoidant realizes you're done trying, everything changes. When a fearful avoidant realizes you are truly done trying, something subtle but deeply psychological begins to shift inside them. This is not the dramatic realization people expect, filled with apologies or sudden emotional clarity. Instead, it begins as a quiet internal disruption where their usual emotional defenses no longer function the way they used to. For the first time, they are not reacting to your pursuit, your patience, or your emotional availability. They are reacting to the absence of it. Fearful avoidants are wired around a paradox that most people never fully understand until it's too late. They crave connection deeply, yet feel unsafe the moment it becomes real. They want intimacy, but interpret emotional closeness as a loss of control. So throughout the relationship, they balance on a fragile line between wanting you near and needing you far. Your effort was the stabilizer that kept that balance intact. When you were trying, explaining, accommodating, and staying emotionally present, their nervous system stayed regulated. They could pull away knowing you would reach forward. They could shut down knowing you would keep the emotional door open. They could disappear emotionally because your consistency reassured them they wouldn't be abandoned. Ironically, your effort made their avoidance possible. But when you stop trying, something fundamental changes in the emotional equation. There is no longer a predictable emotional response for them to lean against. There is no reassurance coming from your side to regulate their internal chaos. The silence you create is not peaceful to them, it is destabilizing. And that is where their behavior begins to change. The first thing a fearful avoidant does when they realize you are done is attempt emotional re-anchoring. They may reach out casually, pretending nothing significant has shifted. They may send a neutral message, a memory, or a check-in that seems harmless on the surface. This is not a grand attempt to reconnect, but a test of emotional availability. They are checking whether the old dynamic still exists. If you respond the way you used to, they relax instantly. If you respond briefly, neutrally, or not at all, anxiety begins to rise. This anxiety does not immediately look like vulnerability. Instead, it often looks like confusion, irritation, or emotional distancing. They feel something is wrong but cannot yet name it. When the fearful avoidant senses that you are no longer emotionally chasing, their internal alarm system activates. This alarm is rooted in their deepest wound, abandonment mixed with fear of closeness. Your absence forces them to face a feeling they have spent their life avoiding. They can no longer outsource emotional stability to you. They are left alone with their own unmet needs. At this stage, many fearful avoidants oscillate rapidly between desire and withdrawal. One moment they miss you intensely, the next moment they feel overwhelmed by that longing, so they pull back again, trying to regain emotional control. This push-pull becomes more erratic than ever. Some fearful avoidants respond by suddenly becoming warmer. They may show curiosity, softness, or emotional openness that you rarely saw before. This is not manipulation in the conscious sense, but a nervous system seeking safety. Your emotional distance forces them into proximity. They reach because the emotional void feels unbearable. Others respond in the opposite way and become colder, sharper, or dismissive. They may rewrite the relationship in their mind to protect their ego. They may tell themselves you were never that important. They may minimize the connection to reduce emotional pain. This emotional numbing is a survival strategy, not indifference. What's important to understand is that fearful avoidants do not process loss the way secure people do. They do not grieve cleanly or directly. They fragment the experience to avoid emotional overload. They feel pieces of loss in waves rather than all at once. This makes their reactions seem confusing and inconsistent. As time passes and your lack of pursuit remains consistent, a deeper realization begins to set in. They start to understand that this time is different. There is no emotional tug of war anymore. There is no reassurance waiting on the other side of their withdrawal. The relationship is no longer emotionally accessible. This realization often triggers regret, but not in the way movies portray it. It is quiet, internal, and often unspoken. They replay moments where they pushed you away. They remember times you showed up when they shut down. They feel the weight of missed safety. Fearful avoidants struggle most when they realize they were emotionally safer than they allowed themselves to feel. Your consistency becomes clearer in your absence. Your emotional maturity becomes obvious when it's no longer available. They begin to recognize that the threat was never you. The threat was intimacy itself. At this stage, some fearful avoidants attempt reconnection more directly. They may express nostalgia rather than accountability. They may say they miss the connection without addressing why it broke. They may hint at closeness while avoiding responsibility. This is their fear speaking louder than their awareness. Others remain silent, but think about you far more than you realize. Fearful avoidants are experts at hiding emotional pain. They can function externally while internally looping through regret. Silence does not mean resolution. Often, it means suppression. One of the most uncomfortable truths for a fearful avoidant is realizing that you chose yourself without punishing them. You didn't fight. You didn't beg. You didn't explode emotionally. You simply stopped trying. This is deeply unsettling because it removes their narrative of being chased or controlled. There is no villain in your departure. There is only consequence. And consequences force self-reflection. That is something fearful avoidants avoid most. When they realize you are done, they are forced to sit with a mirror they never wanted to look into. They see how fear dictated their behavior. They see how safety felt unfamiliar. They see how closeness triggered flight. This awareness can be painful, but also transformative. However, not every fearful avoidant grows from this moment. Some retreat deeper into avoidance. Some choose partners who feel emotionally unavailable to maintain control. Some repeat the pattern without awareness. Growth requires courage they may not yet have. What matters most in this dynamic is not what they do next. What matters is what you stop doing. You stop proving your worth. You stop managing their fear. You stop abandoning yourself to stay connected. The moment you stop trying is the moment the power dynamic dissolves. Not because you gain control over them, but because you reclaim control over yourself. That shift is felt energetically, not logically, and fearful avoidants are highly sensitive to emotional energy. They sense when access is gone. They feel when safety is no longer offered. They notice when emotional labor is withdrawn, even if they never admit it, even if they never reach out. So when a fearful avoidant realizes you are done trying, what they do is reveal themselves. They reveal their fear through silence or pursuit. They reveal their wounds through confusion or regret. They reveal their limitations through avoidance or longing. And in that revelation, clarity finally arrives for you, because you no longer need them to choose you. If this resonated, it's because you've lived it, not because you imagined it. You don't need closure from someone who couldn't show up emotionally. Choosing yourself was the moment the cycle finally ended. And that quiet strength is something no avoidant ever forgets. You already did.